Welcome to Backwoods Pursuit. I'm Gabe Garish, and today we're going to take a look at ultralight pan heads. If you're looking for a tripod pan head to carry into the backcountry, but you still need the stability to use your binoculars, a spotting scope, or a camera, that's what this video is for. We spent the last year to 2 years testing each of these tripod pan heads. I want to bring you the results, things that we liked about them, as well as the things that we didn't. We'll go over the details of their performance, as well as the things that make each of them unique, so you can make a decision on what's going to work best for you. I'll put a link to each of these down in the description so you can check them out for yourself, as well as a link to our website, backwoodspursuit.com. Go check that out. A bunch more gear reviews over there. Let's get started. All right, to get started, we're going to outline what this review is about. As I mentioned, this is about ultralight tripod pan heads. So we didn't have any ball heads that we tested here. That's an entirely separate category. There are a ton of lightweight ball heads out there, and there's also a ton of the heavier tripod pan heads, the full-size pan heads that give you better performance than these ultralight models. So we wanted to narrow it down to ultralight pan heads that were 9 ounces or below. That was the parameters for this review, and we came up with these 5 models, kind of 6. We have 2 of the same model, but just with a different clamp style, but 5 total different models that we focused on in this review. Now for this review, we're going to go over 8 factors that we assessed with these ultralight pan heads. First one being weight, of course, makes a big difference in an ultralight pan head. Smoothness, how smooth did they operate in their pan and tilt functionalities? How versatile were they? How durable were they? As well as how easy were they to use? Some were definitely more easy to use than others. We're also going to look at how they handled weight, such as a spotting scope versus binoculars. We're going to look at their price point and each of their unique features. And then finally, we're going to go over the things I liked and didn't like about each of these specific models. Now jumping right into the weights, the Outdoorsmans Micro Pan Head here. This is the older model, by the way. It is a little bit lighter than the new model. This one came in at 8.3 ounces on my scale, and the specs on the new one says that is going to come in at 10.4 ounces. You do get the ARCA compatibility and the Outdoorsman's compatibility with the new one. That is the update on that, but this one we tested the older model because we started testing again quite a while ago, so the new model was not even out yet when we started testing this. This is the Altitude Outdoors, the Nano Pro. This one came in right at 9 ounces, and this one's unique because it's a fluid pan head. The Tricer LP came in at 4.3 ounces. That's the lightest of the group. The Wiser Precision Nighthawk, this one came in right at 6 ounces. Now the Really Right Stuff Scout here, this one comes in a couple of different clamp models, and we have 2 of the 3. This one is their traditional twist style. This one came in at a weight of 7.8 ounces, whereas the one with the quick release clamp here, this one came in at right at 9 ounces, so a little bit heavier, but you get the functionality of the quick release clamp style. Jumping right into their operation and the smoothness and the way that they pan and tilt, how smooth were they in those functionalities? Because in ultralight pan heads here, you typically don't have anything that is a fluid pan head. There was one exception here. This is the Altitude Outdoors Nano Pro head. This is actually a fluid head coming in at 9 ounces that we mentioned a minute ago. So you have a true fluid head. It's very exceptional in its functionality. It's the best of the group in how smooth it operates. It's not really a fair comparison because this is a fluid head, whereas none of the others are fluid heads, but it did meet the weight category, so I felt like it was warranted to be in this review project. At 9 ounces, it's a little on the heavy side compared to others, but it did operate the smoothest of all of them. Now of the rest of them here that are not fluid heads, I felt like the smoothest just barely was the Tricer LP. This is also the lightest model, which is pretty incredible. It's extremely smooth. Both pan and tilt work really, really well. There are some limitations to that we'll talk about later, but it was the smoothest I felt like. Next, and right on its heels, was the Wiser Precision Nighthawk. These two were so incredibly close, almost indistinguishable, the difference between them. They're super, super close, both very, very smooth, amazing little pan heads, particularly for their weight. This one comes in at 6 ounces again. Just an incredible ultralight pan head. Next, you've got the Really Right Stuff Scout. This was the third best of the non-fluid heads. I thought it was still very smooth, but a little bit more difficult to find that ability to pan and to tilt without it catching just a little bit, depending on what optic you're using. Still worked really well, but just a little bit, not quite as smooth as the Tricer or the Nighthawk in its pan and tilt functionality. Now lastly, we have the Outdoorsmans Micro Pan Head. I felt like this one was the most sticky in both the pan and the tilt of all of these. It certainly has its benefits that we'll talk about in a little bit, but as far as that functionality, it just tended to be the most difficult to find that tension, the appropriate tension to be able to pan and tilt. The pan particularly seems to be either off or on. It's either stuck right where you want it, or it's completely loose and kind of moving around too easily is what I felt like. So that one was what I felt the least smooth of the group here. Now diving right into durability, going from top to bottom here, I felt like, again, this is just my opinion based on my use here, but I felt like the Outdoorsman's Micro Pan Head was the most durable option of this group. It's absolutely bomb-proof. It's built like a tank. It's going to take a beating and last you a long, long time. A very, very close second, though, I felt like was the Really Right Stuff Scout. This thing is also built like a tank. It gives you a ton of features, particularly with some of the things that are built into this that we'll go over later, some of those unique features. This thing is absolutely durable and gives you just a ton of functionality as well. Right behind that, getting into the lighter weight models here, I felt like the Wiser Precision Nighthawk was the next in the durability. It is very small framed, very minimalistic in style, but it is also very well built and super, super sturdy. Next, I felt like the Altitude Nano Pro here. This is still built very well, it has given me no problems. I've used this a lot. It's good enough that I've used it doing some filming. I've used it out in the field with a super heavy spotting scope, a 99mm spotting scope, and it's handled that really well. So it's done everything I've asked it to, and it's done it really well, and it so far has been very, very durable. Probably the least durable, I would say, based on just the use that I've given it and the build here, is going to be the Tricer LP. It's the lightest, so that's not surprising. It's the most minimalistic design of all of these, so it's harder to believe that this would withstand as much abuse as some of the other ones, but you are getting also the lightest weight option here with the Tricer. So pros and cons there, some of the things you give up to get, but that was my thoughts on durability on each of these. Next, let's look at versatility. Versatility is important because typically in an ultralight pan head like this, you would think you're not going to get much versatility, but there are certainly some exceptions to that in this group. The number one being the Really Right Stuff Scout. This thing is incredibly versatile. It gives you far more than any of the others in its functionality. You've got the ability here to extend the handle, which none of the others give you that ability. So you can use one length or another, depending on if you're using a spotting scope or a pair of binoculars, whether you want that handle out farther away from you or tucked in tight. It is very, very nice that way. You've got both independent pan and tilt functionalities and adjustment there. You also have, as I mentioned earlier, a Picatinny built into this, so you can attach this directly to your gun if you have a Picatinny rail on your gun. And then you also have you have 3 different clamp options. You can do the standard twist style like this. You also can do a quick release style, which is very, very nice for clipping in. Again, Picatinny and Arca, both of them. All of these are Arca, by the way. The Outdoorsman's did not used to be, but it is now with the new model. So then you have back on the Scout here, you've got the lever lock there, which is very, very nice, very convenient, but you do have a little over 1.5 ounce penalty there for that. And then you can also get this with no clamp if you want to have that option there. The bottom of this also is interesting in that it is also Arca. So if you want to put this on top of, say, a ball head, you can go ahead and do that. And this is another one of the heads that slides right on there. So you have Arca on the bottom and on the top here, and it gives you that ability, more functionality, more freedom to build out a system that's going to work best for you. So that is, I felt like, the most versatile option. Next in versatility, I really felt like was actually the Altitude Nano Pro here. And the reason for that is not because it gives you anything like what the Scout gives you there, but because it's a fluid pan head. It handles really heavy optics really, really well. Not just handles them, but allows you to very usable micro pan head, very usable ultralight pan head here, both in the tilt and the pan functionalities. So you can use it for binoculars, spotting scopes, cameras, even shooting off this is very possible as well. It'll handle that. So I felt like because of that, that was the second most versatile of all of these options. Next up is probably the Outdoorsmans. You have both ARCA and the Outdoorsmans clamps, or the plate styles, and it just gives you again, the ability here to use this with heavy optics if you want to. It's not the smoothest as we mentioned earlier, but it does lock down an optic the best of all of these. If you lock down this handle, that is not going to go anywhere, and it is going to give you the most positive engagement of all of these if you're needing to lock down an optic. And that's really what Outdoorsman built this for, to be able to really lock down your optics. If you're panning and you want to lock it down on an object, particularly a heavier spotting scope, it can do that even at the weight that it is at currently. Now finally, you've got the Wiser Precision Nighthawk and the Tricer LP. These are really pretty much identical in their versatility. They are, of course, ARCA, and as I mentioned, they're all ARCA. But that's really all that they offer. They're ultralight. They're very, very smooth, but they don't have a whole ton of versatility. With those, you're primarily looking at how lightweight they are and their ability to handle heavier optics. Now, I will say that the Wiser Precision handles heavy optics better, I thought, than the Tricer. The Tricer tends to, particularly if you're digiscoping, I've used this digiscoping even with the 66 millimeter, 65, 66 size spotting scope. You really have to crank on that handle to get it to stop where you, or to stay where you leave your spotting scope, whereas the Tricer is a little bit more, a little bit better in that regard. It sticks on the object and doesn't fall down when you clamp on that handle. So it did a little bit better job, I thought. So in that way, I felt like the Wiser was a little bit better than the Tricer. Now, as far as ease of use, now by that I mean, what's the overall user experience for each of these? Now, obviously, they have a lot of different features here, but how easy was it to line something up with your spotting scope and keep it on that object? How smooth was it overall in that regard? If you're looking for something ultralight, the Tricer LP and the Wiser Precision Nighthawk, both fantastic. They're ultra simple. They are the screw-on style, which that's fine. That keeps the weight down. It does take a little bit longer to screw that on there and clamp that plate on, but they're very, very user-friendly, very simple, very easy to use, and do a really great job. Now, if you're willing to carry a little bit extra weight, man, the Scout sure does a great job. It's super versatile, like we talked about. Gives you lots of options with that handle, the different clamp styles, the Picatinny rail built in, the ARCA built in. So much going on at just 7.8 ounces here, if I remember correctly. It's a fantastic option in the Scout, and it's super versatile, really easy to use as well, and just gives you a lot of functionality there. The Nano Pro here does a really nice job. It's the smoothest, as we mentioned. If you're looking for something that is very user-friendly, very smooth, and gives you more of a video style head in a 9-ounce package, this is fantastic. The least user-friendly for me was the Outdoorsman's. It was the most, it grabbed the most. It was the hardest to get lined up. But then also, if you did get yourself lined up on, say, a buck out on with a spotting scope, it sure did a great job of just locking onto that and not creeping at all. It's really easy to clamp that down. That's the way they built this, and does a great job. But I just found that at times, if you forgot to all the way snug down that pan or the tilt, it just would want to fall on you, and it could be detrimental to your optic if you forgot to do that. And it is something that you have to learn and get used to. You of course do the more you use it, but it was probably the most difficult to get used to in that regard. Now let's look at which ones were the best at handling a heavy optic. I thought the Nano Pro here did the best because it's a fluid head. It's, again, not really a fair comparison, but it's a fluid head, and it handled that 99 millimeter spotting scope. Excellent. It did a really good job and made the experience really easy to use. Now this Outdoorsmans Micro Pan Head did a fantastic job as well. It's just a totally different feel. It's catchy, it's grabby, but when it grabs on, it stays right where it's at, and it can handle that heavy optic if you want it to. It's just not going to be that smooth, but it did an excellent job of handling heavy optics. Now the Scout here came in third, I thought. It does a fantastic job of handling heavy optics. Again, it's built more robust. You can kind of see a trend of, if you need extra performance for something heavier, you're going to have a little bit more of a weight penalty there, but these Scout models did excellent in that regard. And then Wiser Precision Nighthawk here did a good job of handling the spotting scope, good enough to where if you're in the backcountry, that's all you're going to need. It's going to work for you, but it's not quite as good as some of the others. And I did feel like the Tricer here struggled a little bit more on some spotting scopes, anything over that 65 millimeter size, and it had a difficult time really locking it down. You really had to crank on that handle to get it to stay. It'll do it, and it'll work all right, but you just have to put a little extra effort in and make sure that you don't forget to tighten that and clamp that all the way down. All right, now price points on each of these. The Outdoorsmans here comes in at $300 right now, and the Altitude Nano Pro, it comes in at just $95. It's quite a bargain. The Tricer LP comes at $180. Again, a very good value there. Wiser Precision here, Nighthawk, comes in at $300 as well. The Really Right Stuff Scout with this twist-on clamp comes in at $215, and the option with the quick release lever comes in at $300 also. All right, now looking at the unique features of each of these, starting with the Tricer LP. It is got a carbon handle with a foam rubber grip here, screw-on clamp style for the ARCA clamp, and just your typical pan clamp right there. Nothing overly unique. It's very minimalistic in design, other than it is incredibly smooth and functions very, very well for such a lightweight pan head. The Wiser Precision Nighthawk, very, very similar. A carbon handle with a rubberized or foam style grip here. A little bit longer handle. I do prefer the shorter handle of the Tricer though. This is a little bit longer than it needs to be in my opinion, but it does work. It's a good balance for spotting scope and binoculars. Screw-on clamp style, same kind of pan locking style there. One unique thing about this though is it is made in the USA. The Tricer is not, so keep that in mind. That the Wiser is made in USA. Now going over to the Really Right Stuff Scout, this is by far the most unique and versatile unit of all of these. Has this extending handle that you lock into place there for depending if you're using a spotting scope or binoculars. It's very nice in that regard. 3 different clamp styles, the twist style, the lever lock, or no clamp, which is really nice. You also have built-in ARCA and Picatinny in there, so if you want to clamp onto your rifle and use this for support that way, it's great in that regard. You do have a twist style here for your pan lock. Does a really nice job there. And each of those have adjustments, so you can adjust some of the tensions with the pan and the tilt internally. There's a function you can go through that process. There's some screws built in. Very easy to do, but you can make it either have more or less resistance, something that is easily adjustable with this that the others don't have. And you have ARCA on the bottom, so it gives you additional versatility. If you want to use this for anything, ARCA on the bottom of this. It gives you that ability built in and works with a lot of other Really Right Stuff products as well. If you go with this clamp style, it's very easy to adjust the ARCA size. Not all the ARCA plates are spec'd the same, so it gives you the ability to do that. That's all built in, and that is made in the USA, which is awesome. All the Really Right Stuff is, so another unique benefit to that. Going over to the Nano Pro here from Altitude Outdoors. It's not overly unique and not versatile in the sense of all that it can do, but it is very versatile in the sense of it'll handle just about any optic you need it to. Large spotting scope, binoculars, cameras, and it does so really, really well because it's a fluid pan head at just 9 ounces. You're not going to find a whole lot better performance for 9 ounces right there, but you do have twist lock style there, again with another push button, so you can drop your plate in there, where some of these don't have that option. In fact, this is the only one that you can do that with. I do like that. And it gives you just a very nice and smooth functionality all the way around if you want to generally use that for glassing, for cameras, for just about anything you need to. Now the uniqueness of the Outdoorsmans is just how well it's built. It has a nice short handle, which I do like. It's nice and compact. And I really like the quick release lever here. It makes it super fast, super easy to disengage the plate and put the next one on. I really, really like that. And it's built like a tank, like we talked about earlier. It has a taller profile than the others. It's quite a bit taller than the others, but not as long either. So it fits nicely in your backpack. Again, this is made in USA, and incredibly well built and a super durable unit. All right, finally, let's go over what I liked and didn't like about each of these. We'll start with the Outdoorsmans Micro Pan Head. Things I did not like about this, it was the stickiest of the bunch. And by sticky, I mean, like I mentioned, if you're wanting to pan or tilt with this, It's just difficult to find that smoothness if you're wanting to use it to grid through a mountainside or something of that nature. It does an amazing job of locking down. If you could twist this handle, it is not going to move anywhere. That is one of my favorite things about this. It does an incredible job in that regard, but it does make it very, very difficult to find a tension point where you can scan and grid with both the pan and the tilt. And the pan is a little bit worse, I would say. It's either off or on. It feels like it's either you want to lock it down where you've got it, or you want to leave that thing all the way open so you can pan very, very easily. Now, I absolutely love that Outdoorsman's incorporated an Arca plate into this. I don't love that the extra weight that was added up to 10.4 ounces now. So if we were to start this review now, this one wouldn't even qualify in the weight category. So that's a bit of a bummer, the extra weight there. But it is nice that it has the Arca compatibility, Arca or Outdoorsman's plates here. Along those lines, this lever lock here was my favorite. It's fast. It just takes a half a twist there and it comes on or off and locks down really, really well. I really, really like that. And I love that it's made in the USA. So that's the Outdoorsman's likes and dislikes. Going over to the Altitude Outdoors. This is an incredible little pan head for just $95. Price point's incredible. It's super smooth. It handles heavy optics. That's what I love about this. I do like the push-on style there with the twist lock. It does take an extra step, so I could see why some folks don't like that, rather than just screwing that down and tightening it down. But it does allow you to drop your plate in there without having to slide it in there or open up the lever all the way. So it gives you that little extra functionality, which I do like. Otherwise, it's just a great unit. This is, again, an older model. This handle does not move, which is something that I don't like about this one. But I know in the Gen 2 or the next model, that is movable, so you can loosen that and put it in line with your tripod if you're storing it in your backpack or whatnot. So that is nice. Just an overall really, really good value. Price point's amazing at 95 bucks again for a fluid pan head that is just 9 ounces. Moving over to the Tricer LP. As you can imagine, the things I loved about this, the weight is incredible, 4.3 ounces. You would think at that weight you're not going to get much performance, but that is absolutely not the case. This is the smoothest of all of the ultralight pan heads here, save for the fluid pan head. It's just incredible. It's half the weight, or more than half the weight of this Nano Pro, and just an incredible performer. The pan and the tilt work really, really well. It's not made in USA. I wish it was, but it's not. And it does an okay job of handling heavier optic like a spotting scope. You can use it and it does work. It works just fine. But if you're wanting to do any digiscoping or wanting to, say, lock that spotting scope onto a deer and have your buddy come look at it, it takes a little bit of making sure that that is locked down really, really well. It doesn't creep too bad, but it will just a little bit on you. I've had it happen a few times. So keep that in mind. Or if I got the spotting scope on there, put my phone on there to digiscope, and it'll want to move on me a little bit. So didn't love that about it, but overall it's an incredible performer at its weight and just super, super smooth. I like the short handle here. Makes it nice and low profile. It is for what it is and what its purpose is. It does great. It's not great for shooting off of, you can know, but it's not really built for that, even though it can't handle that functionality. Similarly, you've got the Wiser Precision here. Again, it's super smooth. The difference between these two is almost not even noticeable in their smoothness and their functionality. The handle's a little bit longer here. I don't particularly love that. It's not necessary, but it doesn't really get in the way or bother me. You could actually save a little bit of weight here. This being 6 ounces, you could probably save an ounce or so and put this in that 5 ounce range by cutting off the handle or going with a little shorter one. This is an older model. They may have changed something since then. I've had this for a number of years, since it came out really, and used it a whole bunch. I really love this Nighthawk. It's made in the USA. I love that about it. It's just super smooth, super simple, great for just about everything, and works with a spotting scope. I have used up to an 85mm spotting scope on this, and it works okay. Not the best, but it does work in a pinch, and it gets the job done for you. Now, lastly, looking at the Really Right Stuff Scout. I really like this pan head. It is super versatile, like we talked about. It has so many functionalities there. It gives you a lot in just a super lightweight pan head here. Really love the extending handle, but at the same time, when you have a heavier optic on there, it does introduce just a little bit of movement there. So if you're real picky about that and you don't like any movement at all, you will notice just a little bit in that handle, particularly when it's extended. Of course, extra lever. or extra length there is going to give you that extra leverage, but it does introduce a little bit of movement there. I did notice a tiny bit of play. I don't even want to call it play, but just movement. If you don't have this pan locked all the way down, you'll notice it a little bit. So if you're trying to run that pretty loose and do your panning and tilting, you'll notice just a little bit of play in that if you have a heavier optic, but if you lock that down, that'll go away. It's just one of those machining and functionality things that's hard to get around, but it's built like a tank. It handles optics really well. It does just about everything you need it to do in a nice package. Love that it has all the versatility of the different clamp styles to cover whatever you need, and I love that it's made in the USA. So that is the really right stuff. It's an awesome unit as well, and it's super usable, super versatile. So there you go. That is a lot of information on these ultralight pan heads. I will drop a link to each of these down in the description so you can check them out for yourself. And don't hesitate to drop a question or comment down in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer each one of those and help point you in the right direction depending on what you're using it for. I use each of these in various situations depending on what I'm taking on the trip, what the use case is, and likely for you will be the same. What you're going to be using it for will point you in one direction or another. Thanks for watching here today, and we will see you next time.